Yay, it worked.
And
Welcome
in the
everyone to
rain,
and
in the rain, it worked.
in the rain it works. I guess it needs to rain for us to get on all our platforms, but we are on all our platforms this morning. Welcome everyone. My name is Stuart Fournier and welcome to Sand and Soul. I'm a 25-year veteran of the real estate world here in the Los Angeles and specifically the South Bay areas. And it's my pleasure to introduce my lovely co-host.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anastasia Bonholzer. I'm a residential mortgage broker in the South Bay and beyond, lending in California, Texas, and Florida. Thank you so much, Stuart. What an exciting topic we have today.
Well, we do
One
have
of
an
your favorites.
exciting one of my favorites, right? But let me get rid of that. Okay. For those of you that don't know, we're everything on this broadcast. But I have something very special today that I think you'll find very exciting, Anastasia.
Whoa.
Not just that, but we have a sponsor for the show now.
Oh,
And
oh,
yeah, isn't that
how
exciting?
lovely. Wow,
Yes,
that's amazing.
and you know who she is. Oh, that's not her. Let's see, where is she? Okay. Tammy
Nice.
from Down Under is our new
Nice.
sponsor. She's sponsoring our show today, so I'm going to read just a little uh, 5-second commercial for Tammy at Down Under. If you're working on your travel bucket list, call Tammy at Essential Down Under Travel for Australia, New Zealand, and the South Pacific Islands. She will design a unique itinerary specific for you based on your interest and travel lifestyle. So thank you so much, Tammy, for sponsoring our show today. We're very excited to have our very first sponsor. I know Anastasia knows you well, and she was all part of our
Yeah,
networking
Tammy's
group.
fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tammy's fantastic. She was able to put together a trip for me for Fiji, which I'm going to take next year. So I'm really excited to actually. She goes over and beyond. And not always do you need a travel agent, but when you're going to some places which require more handholding, especially if you want to see locales that are outside of the norm, which Expedia doesn't offer, definitely she's Tammy's the one
Yeah, for
to
those of
go
you that
to.
don't know, the travel industry is changing a little bit, and I think travel agents are coming back because they provide a very essential service, and we're happy to have Tammy as a sponsor. So let me get rid of my Chirons today. We have quite a few, and the reason that we have quite a few is that we have a not doing a good job here. Ah, okay, there we go. Uh, let's see, is that you have to have that.
Yeah, and I'm gonna jump into it a little bit. We're talking about affordable housing today. Affordable housing in the South Bay. What does it mean, and how does that affecting the everyday individuals who live in the South Bay? Specifically, I think you want to touch base on our new SB 330, perhaps, right, where an apartment building can go up next to a single family home, which we all collectively don't want to happen. But here we are.
Here we are, and let's get started. I'm going to start from the very top because this is a very controversial and emotional subject for a number of people across the South Bay in particular, because they really haven't known about something that's actually been going on for decades. So what I'm going to do for the next 20 minutes or so is give a little bit of a history about how this came about and how it will affect the communities specifically very impactful in the South Bay. These affordable housing laws are very misunderstood, and understandably so, because they've actually been around since the 1970s. And that's something people don't really know. So I'm going to try to take it from the top here and get into it a little bit. And of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section and we'll be happy to address them. But let me go ahead and get started. A little bit about my background. I was a former planning commissioner for the city of Manhattan Beach when this all started to really come to a head around 2017 to 2020. I was graciously given the opportunity to go up to Sacramento back in the day if you call that back in the day. And
Before COVID, I
yeah,
guess it
before
is back in
COVID,
the
yeah.
day.
Well, ironically, it was the very weekend before we had the shutdowns for COVID.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
was actually in Sacramento at the time. But I got educated about a subject that I didn't have any idea was going to become so controversial in the South Bay. And so my perspective on this has been from a very educated standpoint as far as the state is concerned, what their attitude is and what they're doing to enforce affordable housing law. So let me get started again for the third time. I'm going to get started and talk about that. First of all, these laws have been around, like I said before, since the 1970s, and I'm going to get just a teeny bit political here, because since the 1970s, we've had both Republican and Democratic governments. In other words, both parties have contributed to these laws for what is close to 50 years, a little over 50 years. So understand that I know a lot of people, like to sort of divert this into a political conversation, but the truth of the matter is that this is something that came about as a result of both parties over the last 50 years. Now, what happened was there were affordable housing laws and restrictions that were put in effect for all these decades. But the truth of the matter is, out of the 483 cities in California, none of them were paying attention. None of them were
Mm.
really following up with the regulations. No one was accountable, and they just weren't on anyone's to-do list in any of the cities across the areas. And the developers, of course, were always wondering when it was going to take effect, and they could never plan. And of course, they were always sort of on the sideline. Well, around 2017, Governor Newsom and the legislature at the time, if you want to get political, I guess you could say that, that's where it started, decided that enough was enough. And they were going to start putting some teeth into regulations on these laws because, again, as I said, everyone was ignoring them. So in 2017, basically what they did was they set up criteria for every city in California to be compliant with affordable housing laws by the year 2030,
Mm.
realizing that if they were going to create regulations and basically punish cities that weren't paying attention to these laws, they needed notice, they needed time, and they needed to obviously appeal to their electorate and explain to
And
them
just
what was
to
going
go
on.
back to the basics, affordable housing just means housing meant for individuals who are under a certain income threshold, right? Is there any
Well,
more than that?
yeah, actually you're clarifying something that I probably should have started out with in the beginning. These affordable housing laws really are addressing the crisis in California that's been going on again since the 70s with a lack of housing. So it's not just the affordability factor, but it's also the fact that there is a bona fide housing crisis in California. We have 45 million people that are in California, and we don't have enough homes to put them in. And so, not only, in answer to your question, Anastasia, which is a great question, not only are we addressing the affordability factor for people, but we're also addressing just the housing numbers, the ability for people
Hmm.
to find housing to begin with. Now, as far as the affordability goes, I can't get into that specifically because that would take, again, another conversation. But to answer your question directly, yes, there is a percentage in all of these laws where the cities are being forced to make it affordable for those that are either middle income or in the poverty arena. I know there's a better term for that, excuse me, but
I don't know.
basically,
It's a
right.
controversial topic, but I don't think somebody in poverty income should be on the Strand in Manhattan Beach. At least that's me
Well,
speaking out. You know what I mean?
no, I
So
can appreciate the statement, but trust me, again, I don't want to
yeah.
get too far off the course here, but that's not really possible. And
Okay. Good.
there's
Good.
there's a number of reasons for that, right? Now, it's not designed to force people into housing no matter what, to a degree. Okay, it's
Hmm.
very, very limited. As for example, if you have a unit that's maybe 150 people, 150 units or so, you're going to only allow for maybe 8 or 9 of those units to be affordable housing. So it's not the
Mhm.
balance is there, but let's not get into that for a second.
Yeah.
All right. So what happened was, again, the legislature realized that it was going to take years to implement these restrictions, which I will get into in just a second, and they're pretty severe. I mean, there's
Mhm.
something that the cities really cannot afford to mess with, and we have a fantastic example of that in the beach cities, where both Manhattan, Hermosa, and Redondo are, having a real struggle, not only dictating. I'm sorry, dictating is the wrong word, but educating the public about what the situation is. So there were 6 different deadlines over the course of uh, up until 2030. And okay, hang on, just one s- 1 second here. Gonna have to mute myself. Okay, I'm back. All right. So let's see, 6 deadlines. Okay.
Yeah, so it's
So
how the
what?
housing element. So it's this the California is implementing housing element, which is the number of housing units that must be developed in each city, and that's a concrete number. And so now each city has a deadline to meet that housing element. Am I getting
Right.
that?
You're getting that. That's perfect. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention is that a lot of people are thinking that it's the responsibility of the cities themselves to actually build the housing themselves. Um, and that is not the situation. The situation
Mhm.
is that the cities have to create a zoning for that particular ability for developers to develop. I've seen flyers and I've seen websites that say cities are being forced to build housing, which is not true. I mean, just think about it for a reason. What city that you know of actually builds houses? That's not what they do. So it's the zoning and the ability for
Yep.
the developers to come in and build in those particular areas. So when
But
people
they do
say that,
approve applications of the developers. A developer can come in and say, based, in this plot of land, I want to put up 16 residential units, or I can put up, a little mall, a mini strip mall. And the city can then, based on that information, accept or deny the application.
exactly that, you're explaining it better than I am. I'm sorry, being distracted here a little bit. Okay, so what happened was the very first stage was the one that caused the most controversy. And then the very first stage, what we had was a concept called the builder's remedy. And what
Hmm.
happened was in the very beginning, they said to builders, look, we're going to give the cities a certain amount of time to comply. But if they do not comply at a certain date, at a certain time, then we're going to basically allow you to build whatever you want, and you
Mm.
can go as high as you want and almost as high as you want. And the parking, we don't care about either. Now, I will tell you the
Wow.
overall theme for some of this restriction was based on parking and based on height. And the state of California, and this was a very big deal when we were commissioners, we couldn't, believe they were doing this, stated that uh, they didn't care about height and they didn't care about traffic. Those were
Mm.
inconsequential. And also, they didn't care about environmental impact reports either. So basically,
Wow.
if you were a city that didn't comply with the first couple of stages, developers had the right to come in and basically build what they want. And they meant it to be punitive in the sense that they meant for the overall constituencies to get mad at the fact that the cities were not complying with the state. And so therefore there was, a lot of angst. And that's exactly what happened in Hermosa Beach. In Hermosa Beach, they did not get their compliance done on time. And so there was a developer who came in and accessed the builder's remedy. And they had the right to do that. And there was a
And
lot
when
of
was that?
controversy. So basically, they were building a 50-foot unit
Hmm.
where Herbosa was only in their original zoning allowing for 30 feet. And they
Mm.
had a perfect legal right to do it because Hermosa Beach had not complied in time for that developer to
And that's
present
unfortunate
his
because what
plans.
if that unit, as essentially, what if it blocked ocean views? At that point, neither the city nor the homeowners have any ability to stop it once the builder's remedy kicks in.
Well,
Because I think there's
uh,
certain other protections in PV where it doesn't apply because they have the home association, council committee, and you can't
well,
block
well,
anyone's view.
Well, guess what? That is kind of going out the window.
Yeah.
These laws do supersede, which is why we're talking about
Wow.
that today. These laws supersede a lot of those municipal codes and a lot of those restrictions, even in their particular zoning. And that's
Mm.
exactly what happened in Hermosa Beach. Now, in Hermosa Beach, the good news is that the developer realized how upset the neighbors were and took
Mm.
into account the angst, and actually decided, even though they at one point weren't, because they were sort of reacting from how everybody was angry from them, but then they took a higher course, in my opinion, and decided to cut it down to 35 feet, which was still
Mhm.
5 feet over the legal limit in Hermosa, but
Mhm.
again, because of the builder's remedy, they had the right to do that. And so it kind of all worked out. And I think that's what's happening now. So they don't have as big of a unit going on. In Manhattan Beach, it was a much, much different story. In Manhattan Beach, there was a development called High Rose, and they are and did build a tremendous complex that really overshadows anything anyone thought could be
Mm.
built over there on Rosecrans and Highland, and it's being built right now. And I can tell you that what happened there was the city dug in its heels and took the whole thing to court, and the developer dug in their heels and went to court. And the courts, and this has been in the case in many, many cities, there's at least 7 or 8 cities that have lost in court over the
Mm.
authority of the state. And there's been a lot of recourse. Now, that costs the city of Manhattan literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. And to this day, no one has been forthcoming about what the actual judgment was, which was obviously in favor of the developer, because the developer is, halfway to building it right now. And I have no idea how much money the builder potentially got from the city as a result of all their
Oh,
legal
wow.
fees. Everyone's been very quiet about that. Now, in Redondo Beach, it's a very interesting situation. It's separate from Manhattan and Hermosa because in Redondo Beach, they have a charter city as opposed to a regular incorporated city. And I won't get into the specifics about that. But Redondo is arguing that that the state has less authority over their decision-making process. And it's all been illustrated by the AES plant, where the smokestacks
Mhm.
are.
Mhm.
And there's, again, a very complicated situation over there. What's happened recently, though, is that Redondo Beach has been basically having their feet to the fire because of that development, because that developer has, first of all, declared bankruptcy, but in the course of his bankruptcy is demanding, in order for the bankruptcy to discharge, he's probably, I shouldn't say, I know this for sure, but my guess is that in bankruptcy court, he is demanding that the city of Redondo resolve whatever disputes they have with the state regarding their affordable housing policies. And
Yeah.
so
But it's a challenge because I know specifically with Redondo Beach because I live here and I'm very much involved on with city council on this. We don't have enough space, and right now a lot of our commercial zoning properties are being replaced by residential zoning. And the majority of the taxes that are being collected from commercial properties, which is the majority of the budget coming in to fund our city, is diminishing year over year, and now the city unfortunately has less budget, and right now there's not enough property taxes being collected from the residents because majority of the time it's the commercial properties that make money for the city, less so the residential. So yeah, so
right.
we'll see what
And
happens with that space, but I imagine it's going to take whoever wins that lawsuit, which is ongoing, whoever wins that space, it's going to take 20, 30, 50 years to kind of demolish the site because it obviously for obvious
yeah,
toxic reasons.
exactly. Well, I don't know the specifics behind that, but what I do know is that these issues about the affordable housing have to be settled first. Otherwise,
Yep.
you're never going to get those smokestacks down. So yeah, so good
Yep.
luck to the city of Redondo. Um, Let me see. What else can we say about this? Da- da-
What do you
da-
think is the future? I mean, what do you think the future holds? I mean, because it seems like the government and the state actually seems to have more and more control over what the cities do, and the cities want to be more want to be more independent in their way because we operate differently than cities that are more inland. I mean, we should have essentially more control because our properties are more expensive. And I mean, again, I'm going to go back to that saying I said in the beginning, and I know it's never going to happen, but I don't want somebody that's low income living in potentially even one block from the Strand because there's affordable housing mandate. I think there's a reason why I work hard to live in Redondo Beach, and that affordability element, I'm sorry, there's other places more affordable.
well, the
So I'm
bottom
kind of
line,
firm. I'm firm on that one.
yeah, the bottom line though is that that these issues have been taken to court on a
Yep.
number of occasions in a number of cities across California, and in every instance they have lost. So
Wow.
the battle is kind of over with respect to the state's authority. Certainly,
Hmm.
anyone can sue anyone at any time and get an injunction and stop things. That's something that we've learned definitely over the last 10 years, right, with our national
Yeah.
administration. But the fact remains that in time and time again, the elements that have been produced, the elements that are regulated, are enforced. In fact, when I was in Sacramento, I can tell you that they informed us that there was a office of 45 attorneys that do nothing but overlook all the cities and what they're doing regarding these affordable housing
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
acts. And I think Manhattan Beach has basically thrown their hands up because Manhattan Beach has approximately 700 units on Sepulveda and Rosecrans that are being proposed. So you are
Hmm.
going to see multi-unit from 7 to 8 and 9 story apartment buildings on Sepulveda,
Wow.
and they don't really have a choice.
Is there anything else?
They're going to happen.
Is there anything that the citizens of these beach cities can do to speak out? Because it seems like it worked, in the case of Hermosa Beach developer, he wanted to build something that's 50 feet and now he was, graciously got cut down to 35 feet, but it's only because the people spoke out. So is that the way we need to do it in order not to have apartment buildings being built right next to single family homes in residential areas?
Well, I'm going to give my personal opinion, and based on the history that I've seen, and based on the legal outcomes that I've read about, and based upon all the arguments that have been brought out, for what, almost 5 or 6 years now by the citizens. And the answer is you're not going to be able to stop the developments, but you can have an impact on how they're developed.
Hmm.
And Hermosa Beach was a perfect example of that. And I will tell you, probably shouldn't say this, but I had inside information that the development in Manhattan Beach could have been scaled down. They were prepared, as I was told anyway, that they were prepared to actually negotiate with the city and with the citizens at the time, but there was nobody on the other end that wanted anything to do with it because they felt that they had a strong legal case, which is fine.
Mm.
If you think you have a strong legal case, then take it to court. But what we've seen time and time again, and in Manhattan Beach's case, they made such an issue out of it, they were actually summoned by the Attorney General of the state of California and said, okay,
Mm.
enough is enough. Now, one thing that may surprise you, and I think that I'm going to surprise even some city councilmen and some commissioners, is that when these projects come up, they are so protected that the city council and commissioners are not even allowed to speak in a negative vein about the
Mm.
project. And so no one's going to come down and put handcuffs on them for speaking their minds. That's obvious. But what
Yep.
happens is, and this is kind of, this is just one small reason they lose in court, is that the people who realize that they're not supposed to be talking negatively in any way, shape, or form about these developments end up having to answer for that in court. So it
Mhm,
works
mhm,
against them. And
mhm.
this is a very hard thing to hear, but I'm going to tell everybody straight out. Not only are the commissioners and city council not allowed to speak in a negative vein about the project, but they must pass. They cannot deny the permit. It's illegal for them to deny the permit.
Yeah.
And a couple of cities have done that. And that's one of the reasons that they have not been successful. And that's one of the reasons why these developments go in their full capacity because they have a legal right to do so. So, to
Yeah.
answer your question, yes, there is something you can do if there's cooperation between the developer and the citizens themselves. Now, in most cases, the citizens always find you know, a nook or a cranny here that they feel is a legal argument, and and then the race is off,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
there's no reasoning. That's kind of what happened in Manhattan Beach, and I'd hate for it to see it happen again. The bottom line is that in these affordable housing developments, yes, to 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 answer your question directly, Anastasia, there is the forced issue in that a certain percentage are given, in my opinion, kind of a break, right? So
Mhm,
in this
mhm.
development in Manhattan Beach, there's going to be 5 or 6 people that, for all intents and purposes, you're absolutely right, are hitting the lottery. Okay, they would not
Alrighty.
normally be able to live in a place like that, but that's a small percentage in
I guess
terms
there
of
should
the
be an
ability to.
additional stipend that it only goes to teachers and local police and fire or something like that. There should be,
Right.
or
And
nurses and doctors in the local hospitals as opposed to somebody random coming in from another city. But again,
and I
just being
want to go out.
protective over my South Bay.
Right. Exactly. No, I understand, and I want to go out on a positive note because you've brought up something that I think can be explored. We have to get beyond the fact that these laws exist. We have to get beyond the fact that, there is going to be change. Otherwise, we're just going to have the same argument and go around and around. So, yes, what you've brought up is a very important aspect that I think we should talk more about, and that is having teachers, having public safety people, having the developers gear their development for that affordable housing towards people
Mhm,
who, like you said, are serving the community. And that is potentially what could happen if there was more communication and more understanding about what these things are all about.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it
So
sounds good. It sounds like we're a very positive note forward. We're going to fight for our teachers and our, service
there you
members,
go. Love
first
love that
responders
idea.
to get
Right.
affordable housing. I'm totally game with that.
Okay. All right. We've been on for
So,
27 minutes. Again, if any of you have any
hot topic.
questions about this topic, I have an extensive background and education about it. I've been following it for years, both from a professional standpoint and also, as a realtor, and you need to know what's going on in your community. So, with that said, Anastasia, any
No,
outgoing
that's it. I
messages?
think my questions are done. I don't have any messages. That I had a couple of comments saying hello, all great information here. So definitely
Great.
we have some people listening, and I'm glad we're able to give you some information to bring some clarity on these very important topics that exist in the South Bay and beyond. And that's what we're here for. So until next week, Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Rain or shine, we're here reporting on the controversies over South Bay and sometimes not so controversial. And we'll
Right.
hit up on another important topic next week.
All right. Good to see you, Anastasia. We'll see you next week. And goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next week at 11 a.m. on Sand to Soul. Bye.